In the last 24 hours, we've seen the XRP price shoot up about 7.5% here, and boy oh boy, does it feel like XRP is on those early stages of taking off here after finally seeing a pretty aggressive pop here on the price chart after just under a week of sideways price action here. And now we're finally starting to see XRP move to the upside and start to create those structures that you want to see before price can actually expand to the upside here. So we're going to jump into a lot here on the XRP price chart. We're going to have a look at comparisons to how XRP reacted on the right side here back from November last year when we've seen it actually shoot to the upside and how we're seeing similarities there. We're going to briefly touch on macro and have a look at how the stock market has opened the week positive here and is still breaking to the upside, and that the M2 money supply continues to increase. And we can see that the global liquidity price in comparison to Bitcoin here sits at just under $150,000 per Bitcoin. We're also going to touch on how XRP is still acting the same way it did back in 2017 on the left side here, and that we are in those final stages now before we should start to see XRP push back to the top of these range highs here. And then we're going to tie all this back to Bitcoin and how Bitcoin's price could react in a moment like this, which could line up for XRP to actually push out to the top of these ranges here. So a lot to cover here today for XRP's video. Let's jump into it. So if you're wondering what these drawings are that I have here marked out on the price chart, in this 5-wave move to the upside here on XRP, followed by that ABC correction, and now you can see that we are working on another 5-wave move to the upside here. This is taken from November of last year, when, as you can see on the right side here, this was how XRP ended up finding its bottom before shooting up north of $2.80. And what you can see here in the way that XRP did find its bottom is it had that large wick which set the low, and then it had a clean 5-wave move to the upside here, followed by that ABC correction, and then you started to see another 5-wave move which ended up taking it back to the top of these ranges here, and then ended up marking the bottom for what was the move to the upside here. And as you can see, when this C wave comes in after this ABC, at no point does it sweep these lows that it's set back when we started counting this first 5-wave move to the upside. And if you have a look on the left side of the screen here, you can say this is XRP's price today, and you can see that XRP's price is reacting quite similar, where we have had that low set the same way we set the low here, and then we have had that 5-wave move to the upside where we've had set higher lows the same way we set higher lows here, and we set higher highs the same way that we'd set higher highs on the right side. And then we eventually got that final 5th wave blow off here, which took us back to the top of this range, which we've marked from here, the same way that back on our right side here in November of last year, we did move straight back to the top of our range, which marked the top of this 5th wave here and the start of the ABC correction, which then ensued. And if you've been watching this channel for the last month, you'd see that we have been monitoring this ABC correction on XRP, and that it ended up holding these lows, which were set back here, the same way we can see on our example here on the right side, ended up also holding its lows here when it came in for that C wave, the same way XRP has acted today. And that one ended up coming next here on XRP was a 5-wave move to the upside, which ended up sweeping the high of our previous 5th wave before the correction here. And that right now, if we have a look at how price is acting on the left side here, we can see that we have been putting in similar structures, making higher highs and hopefully lower lows here, the same way XRP did make the higher highs and then ended up making the lower lows here. And that what we are waiting for now is XRP to come in and actually set the bottom of this 4th wave, but most importantly actually hold the bottom of this 2nd wave here at $2.06. And I think if those levels hold, what we should see is the next move for XRP, which is the move back to the top of this range boundary here at about $2.60. And if things play out like they did on the right side here back from November, we should actually see XRP's price clear the top of those levels, then find support there and then continue to move up. And I think that if we do start to see that play out on XRP over the next week or two, that would likely confirm that this ABC that played out here was the bottom for XRP, and that we shouldn't see XRP at any point come below this $2.60 region if we see it shoot up like it did on the right side here in similar fashion. And that what we are waiting for next is XRP to pull back, hold the bottom of that 2nd wave, and then push to the top of the range boundary here. And I think that all of this happens if we do see the conditions met here on Bitcoin. And what I'm starting to see here on Bitcoin is the fact that we are most likely going to have a shallow correction here, and that we may not see Bitcoin pull back that deep here. As you can see, we have been grinding to the upside here, and the longer I see us grind sideways here and actually hold support at these levels, the more it's pointing to a shallow pullback here for Bitcoin before eventually shooting back to those old all-time highs, or even potentially the top of Bitcoin's B wave that we've been tracking here on the channel. And I think if that is the situation and Bitcoin is to play out like that, that would then allow XRP to find support in similar regions here and actually have the ability to expand and push to the upside as we start to see Bitcoin perform the same way. And I think Bitcoin is going to react like this because, like we touched on yesterday for Bitcoin, we do have the S&P 500 breaking to the upside and starting the week positive, and we do have the Nasdaq still breaking to the upside and starting the week positive again. So the stock market looks good. And then we have the M2 Global Liquidity Index here, which is the money supply. And we can see that that is still pushing to the upside here and nearing that $150,000 level if we were to compare it to the Bitcoin price chart here. Which in last Friday's video, we touched on how the M2 and Bitcoin act quite similar here, and that it's likely for Bitcoin to follow at some point and get to these levels. So everything here that we can see on the stock market and macro and the Global Liquidity Index is all pointing to the upside. And it's just a matter of waiting for Bitcoin to actually pull catch up here and start to break into new all-time highs as well. And I think in that environment, when we start to see Bitcoin take the top of this B wave and eventually push to new all-time highs here above $112,000, is the perfect environment to see XRP push to the upside here. And I think that once we see Bitcoin get back to the top of these ranges here and push for the breakout is when we're going to start to see XRP perform similar to the way it did in 2017 here, where you can see on the left side, this is XRP from 2017 after going in for its mid-cycle correction. And then what we see was XRP just shoot to the upside from here, and it was quite aggressive and happened quite fast. And that right now, if we have a look at XRP's price on the right side here, which is how XRP's price is performing today, you can see that we have performed quite similar structures and that we are in those final stages now, I believe, of starting to see that move to the upside. And what I find quite interesting about this price chart as well is that what you can see here is that if you have a look at XRP's mid-cycle correction here on the left side, you can see that this correction took 208 days from start to end to actually play out. And if you have a look at the right side here, you can see that so far XRP on today's price chart is actually 210 days into this correction. So we're seeing similar time frames here as far as corrections go, and we're seeing similar structures play out here, and lots of signs that we are in those final late stages, and that all it takes at a point like this is one news event to get things started and shoot price to the upside. And I think once XRP's price does shoot to the upside and we do take out those $2.60s, I don't think there is any coming back from that point, and that the next price targets from that level are most likely going to be XRP going to a full 4.236 extension, which ends up taking it to around those $8 to $9 levels. And depending on whether you take the fib from the tariff scare or if you take it from the low of the first flush that happened here when XRP sold off in early February, that either between $8.70 or $9.13 and potentially even a poke above that, the same way Litecoin did here back in 2017, where it did go for that full extension after that consolidation phase in its mid-cycle correction. And you can see it did poke above here. Now, if that was to happen on XRP in today's price chart, we should eventually see XRP poke above that $9 region, potentially even $10, $11, before then eventually topping out, concluding the final leg of this explosive wave here for XRP that we have been looking at for months now on the channel. And I think we are at those very late stages here where we should start to see our first sign that that is what's going to happen next. But I'm not 100% convinced that that's going to play out until I see XRP get back to these $2.60 levels. And I do think we should see price shoot up to there within the next 1 to 2 weeks. So that's what we'll be looking out for here on the XRP price chart. And hopefully we can see all of this play out by Friday. We can come back for the weekly recap and touch on how all of this is playing out. And that if this plays out earlier and we can actually see XRP start to find a bottom here, and then we can see Bitcoin find its bottom here, that we will actually be lining ourselves up for a bit of a live trade here on the channel, looking to get that entry for XRP on that move up to $8. So if that plays out before Friday, I'll see you guys then. But if not, then I'll see you guys on Friday for the weekly recap video, where I'll keep you guys updated on what I'm seeing here, how everything's playing out, if we are still tracking to this plan, and if we are still going to perform and put in the same structures that XRP put in its November bottom here from last year, before it did eventually shoot to the upside. And then I think we have all the macro conditions, and right now what we're seeing is just a waiting game. And everything's telling us we're going to go up. It's just a matter of waiting until price actually catches up and does shoot to the upside here. So if you're new here, feel free to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, it helps a lot. If you have any questions, drop them down below in the comments section, and I'll see you guys back on Friday. Have a good rest of your week.